discussion, how to win collegiate cyber defense competitions.
Good stuff, good stuff. Give it up for the upcoming presenters as they set up. How's everyone's day going? Good? Yeah? That's good. Everyone excited for pizza? It's not going to be very long. I brought an appetite. Alright. Hey, y'all ready? Alright. Hello everyone, good evening. We were the team that won first place overall at Horse Plinko Cyber Challenge in the fall. So what is a Horse Plinko exactly? So a few years ago, a meme went viral on the internet, and it's about this like Plinko board, right? And there was this physics project that was like, demonstrating complex math stuff by tossing animated horses down the Plinko board. And then some hack UCF people were like, wow, that's a really good idea. We should turn this into a cybersecurity competition. And then Horse Plinko Cyber Competition was born. It is a beginner blue team competition. So pretty much, hack UCF members will give you some servers. You have to defend and patch those servers while responding to business requests. And you're getting hacked in real time, and you have to defend it in real time. My name is Ardian. I go by Oats on the Discord, and I was responsible for Linux.
I'm Jonathan. I go by JStyles on Discord, and I was the other Linux person.
My name is Kevin. I was also responsible for Windows, and
I'm Connor, and I was also responsible for Windows as well.
So just uh-oh. Hello.
It should be green.
It's red.
Is there a button that you can press on it?
Hello.
There you go.
Yes, there we go. Perfect. Awesome. All right, go next. Just a quick raise of hands. How many of you people were here in the fall for Horse Plinkos or Night Hacks in general? Okay, good crowd of you. So with Night Hacks, they hosted their hackathon at the same time, and we incorporated our event into them. All right, so yeah, so we're pretty much just going to be going over how we won, the tools we use specifically, and the methodology. And of course, at any time during this presentation, please just shoot your hand up and you can ask any questions. We would love to answer any questions that you have. All right, so Horse Plinko Cyber Challenge is kind of a feeder for the larger cybersecurity competition that runs nationally called Collegiate Cyber Defense Competition. And CCDC is pretty much the model college cyber competition. It runs the exact same way that Horse Plinko does. They give you servers, a bunch of them, Windows, Linux, maybe some cursed BSD stuff, and they have a live team of industry professional red teamers who are just trying to punch your stuff in, and you gotta knock them out. You got a knife fight with them, and you also have to respond to business requests. We call those injects. So during Horse Plinko, we also had business injects that we had to respond to. And responding to business injects and maintaining good business relationships with your customers is extremely important in these blue team style competitions. So again, Horse Plinko is ran by UCF, and we do it every fall. It is a complete beginner competition, and in the fall, we will also have workshops and GBMs based entirely on giving you the skills to actually know what to do in a competition like that.
Are these also limited to two times, or can we do this as much as we need?
Okay, so if you win, you are no longer allowed to compete. That is the unofficial rule that we have decided, because we don't want like advanced people just coming in like every single time. It's a beginner competition. But yes, if you win, you will be expected to actually help run the competition, either with the black team, which actually builds the infrastructure, and we're currently doing training for that, or the red team. You can see those two fellows over there with the red team shirts. They were the hackers. Okay, so in the competition, there's three main domains that we have: Linux, Windows, and business injects. That's just a picture of us competing. We're just going to go specifically into each section on what we did, and Jonathan will open us up with Linux.
So here's the basics of what we're going to cover. We're going to cover passwords, backups, firewalls, SSH, package integrity checks, user management, and then fun tools that Ardian has for us, and then scored services. So for Plinko, we use this curse one-liner to change all the passwords. We had this in our initial script that we ran as soon as we got access to the boxes. This is probably the most important thing you can do is change the passwords. Basically, as soon as you get on the box, change the passwords. Because often the red teamers are using automated scripts using the default credentials to log into your box and break stuff. And if you change your password, it makes it harder for them to log in immediately. I'd say service passwords like the password to the website and the database and whatever are also very important, but not necessarily what you need to worry about the instant you get on a box. And then if you find a PAM backdoor, make sure to rotate your passwords again, because the PAM is the authentication system for Linux. It stands for Pluggable Authentication Module, fun fact. And in Plinko, they had a fun PAM module that whenever you entered your password, it would send a Discord webhook to the red team with your password in it. So once the red team knows your password, you should probably change it.
Even at the high level, like CCDC regionals or nationals, there are still teams who, because there's so much going on at the same time, there are teams, even at nationals, who will get owned because they did not change a password on maybe a service user or some other service that they're running. And to actually change a password on most Linux distros, it's as simple as just sudo passwd and the name of the user, and then you will be prompted to change the user's password. All right, now we're getting to user management. So if any of you by any chance have a Linux VM on you, please feel free to follow along. With the command sudo nano etc password, you will open the file on your Linux server that actually shows every single user. So one thing you have to understand about Linux is that everything is a file, and any file can be edited. And sudo stands for super user do, so it just pretty much means, okay, we're gonna run this command as admin. So sudo means, okay, we're admin. Nano is the name of a text editor, a very simple terminal-based text editor. And etc passwd is the location of your password file, which ironically doesn't actually show passwords, it shows all of the users on the system. And for any service you may have, like a website, a file sharing service, those services have their own users that will specifically just run that service. So you can see here, at the very top we have Ubuntu. And users that are actual user accounts and not system accounts will have a ID of 1,000 or above. And as you can see at the very bottom, we have other users like Oats, me, backdoor user, not a hacker, random fluff user. And to actually delete passwords, you could just do sudo userdel and then the password name. But a trick that I learned, which I think is slightly faster and more efficient, is just open etc password, copy the entire line, and then just delete the line. And then reboot later. What's up?
What service is the user SNE for? What's the SNE daemon?
That is not a service. That is a, as you can see by the user ID of 1001, that is not a service. It is a user account that I created for the purpose of demonstration.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Yes, it's a very important user.
Backups, make them. After you change your password,
Is it better to just delete the user from the list or to send them to no login?
I would say delete them because you can do funny things with no login. Like sometimes Red Team will just copy bash to bin no login, and then it doesn't work. So unless you verified that everything is working as it should be, it's probably best just to delete the user.
Yeah, if Red Team has a shell and they're able to edit etc password, then at that point you might have bigger issues than them changing your etc password file. But checking etc password manually is also really important because, actually let me go back, because as you can see at the very end of the bottom users, bin/zsh, that means they have what is called a ZSH shell. So they have a terminal that they're able to use. That user actually has a terminal. And no login on these other services means the user running that service can't actually log in. However, there are some cases where somebody could possibly change that and actually give an interactive terminal shell to a service account or a hidden user. It's also possible to hide users from the GUI. So like if you're on Ubuntu and you go to settings, click users, accounts, you can see every account there. It is possible to have an account that is not listed in the GUI, but it is hidden in the etc password format. Let's go back to backups.
backups. That would be the second thing I would do after getting on a box, after changing the passwords, because who knows, you're gonna delete stuff, the red teams delete stuff, you're gonna change stuff, stuff is gonna break, and what are you gonna do if you don't have backups? So the directories I think are most important to make backups are opt, Etsy, home, and var. So Etsy is the configuration, home is the home directory of the users, and I would pick an inconspicuous directory. So mount/overlay2 doesn't exist, it's never used, but it looks like it should be there, and so it's unlikely the red team will look at that and think, oh, their backups are there, I should delete that. I'm like, naming it like backups would be super obvious. So after you do your initial copying it to somewhere random on the system, I would make offsite backups as like a lower priority. And in Plinko, there was another server, it was running Splunk. It was explicitly out of scope for red teams. So they could go look at it, touch it, delete stuff on it, whatever. So you could just SCP wherever you moved your backups to over to the Splunk server, and it'd be perfectly safe from the red team for you to go restore later.
Yeah, so for Horse Plinko, we were given an entire box that was just for Splunk, so aggregating logs. Every log and every attack was fed into that Splunk server, and we could actually look through with it. And it was apparently very, very useful for answering some of the injects. Like we were given like instant response when we had to tell what IPs were hacking us or whatever. But we were too busy on our machines, we never actually used Splunk, but we did use the box itself for backing up some programs, because at the very end of the competition, red team went just absolute bananas. They started like deleting like ls, cd, like we couldn't even use normal Linux commands because they deleted the actual binary file that's used for that. But luckily, we were able to use these Splunk blocks to just pipe them, to send them over, and we were good.
Firewalls. This is probably priority 3 after changing passwords, making backups. Then you look at firewalls. So it's important before you start firewalling stuff off, know what services are being scored on your box, what ports they use, and also look for any interdependent services. So stuff on your box that's not necessarily scored, but someone else is using, like a database or something. IP tables is for if you know exactly what you're doing and are prepared to suffer. You get all the control, incoming ports, outbound ports, source ports, destination ports, all kinds of technical gobbledygook I don't have time to explain right now. You will probably mess it up the first couple tries and it won't end well. We used UFW in the competition because I don't want to suffer with those. It's very straightforward. You just UFW add and then the name of the service or the port number, and it just functions pretty well. You don't get all the granular control that you get with IP tables, but it's pretty good.
So if you want to get a job in cyber, specifically with Linux stuff, you are definitely going to need to know how to use IP tables, just because it gives you so much fine control over what firewall rules, what ports, packets, etc., that you want to let in or out of your system. However, we used UFW, which stands for Uncomplicated Firewall. And you can just install it by just using sudo apt install UFW. And I believe it's default Ubuntu now, I think. You may need a fact check on that. It's no source. But you can just enable it with sudo UFW enable. A really important thing to know about UFW is that if you just enable blank without setting any rules, the default position that it takes is, okay, firewall's up, I am not going to let any connections in. So I've done this more than once. If any of you were at Plinko U like 2 weeks ago, I went onto Harrison's box, and then I just deleted all firewall rules, and then just did UFW enable. And what that did was, because I was SSH'd in, SSH being secure shell, it's how we remotely connect to computers, and it blocked everything on the firewall, it immediately killed my session. And since SSH was literally the only way we could get into the box, we pretty much bricked it by firewall, because nobody could actually get into the box. So make sure you actually set up rules first, which are easy enough to do by themselves. So sudo UFW allow SSH. You can do it for protocols, you can also do it for ports. Sudo UFW allow 21. Anyone know what runs on port 21?
Is it FTP, right?
Yes. Wait.
Yes.
Yes, I agree. Had me telling that for a minute. Yes, FTP runs on port 21. That was also a service that was being done at Force Plinko, which we had to protect. You can also deny specific IP addresses. So during competition, as I was seeing different IP addresses connecting, I would just run sudo UFW reject from sample IP address to any, and that would essentially not allow the IP address to interact with us. And then, of course, you can check what rules you have, and you can see everything there. It's very, very simple to run. The syntax is much simpler than IP tables. However, if you want to be a Linux power user, you want to get to Linux security, IP tables is something you will need to know. And now using UFW and everything worked. It was awesome, it was great, until the fact that during comp, we were about halfway through, right? And we were also third to last place. We were all the way at the very bottom. We were getting slammed by red team, and we were pretty much like, we had like almost like a 1,000 or 2,000 point gap in services. Like, it was bad, it was really bad. And I thought it was Jova, right? Because not only are all of our services freaking down, but I saw a connection come through that was from the scoreboard IP address. And not only were they proxying through the scoreboard IP address, but they were doing it with my own user, whose account password I had literally just changed. So it's like, what the hell do you even do in a situation like that, right? Now, this is intentional on the red team's part, because with firewalls, you could just theoretically just block everything, and then you wouldn't have a competition anymore. So red team needs an IP and a server to actually work with. So again, they were attacking me from the scoreboard as a proxy, and then we went out to lunch, and I was like, man, it may be Jover. We were just like, we were chilling outside at the Einstein's Bagel over there, eating our turkey subs, which were pretty good. And I was just like pacing around, I was thinking like, dude, what do I do? Like, I don't know, it's just too soon to lose, right? You're at the halfway point. And then I was hit with this brilliant idea, 200 IQ. I realized, okay, well, I have two users on my service, on my system. There's the Ubuntu user, just the main regular user, but then there's the scoring user. And the scoring user is used by the systems to actually log into SSH and the other services to check to make sure they're all running. And so I realized, well, if they have access to my main user and I can't do anything about that, what if I just deleted my own user account and then just use the scoring user? And suffice to say, that really pissed off red team, because the scoring user is out of bounds, it's off limits. So for a while, they couldn't really do anything, and that bought us a lot of time. However, do know, this was kind of a loophole I exploited. I don't think they expected anyone to do that.
Sorry, I'm sure you get to ask the question.
Yeah.
Okay, so basically, you deleted the Ubuntu user.
Yeah.
Is that how you logged in before?
Yes. The whole time we were using a console to log in, but we were using the Ubuntu user. Yes.
Okay, and then HKey, I remember, is for scoring, right?
Yeah, HKey is
so
for scoring.
Did you log in to the system with that user and deleted the Ubuntu user?
Yeah, so I added, so as you can see in that top right part, I added the HKey user to the sudoers group, pretty much gave him admin, and I was like, all right, this is now my account. And then I deleted Ubuntu with just going into Etsy password, copying the line, and we were able to save the day with that. But of course, this is definitely going to get patched. I don't think they really expect anyone to do that. And back to Jonathan with SSH.
SSH is way more complicated than I can cover in 2 minutes, or even half an hour, maybe an hour, who knows. Basically, here's the basics. Remember that you can whitelist and blacklist users, so allow users will specifically set the users that are allowed to log in. So in this competition, we had allow users, and we just had Ubuntu and HKeying were the only users that were allowed to log in until they compromised Ubuntu, and we covered that. And deny users. If you have a service account or something that's not allowed to be logging in, but you still want all other users to log in, you can use deny users and just deny that one user from using SSH. Remember that SSH keys are a thing, and red team may or may not have put SSH keys on your bots. Remember to check /root.ssh/authorized keys for roots SSH keys, and that's where red team likes to hide them, because it's kind of secret because it's not in /home. And remember, these are probably the most important 2 lines of config, is Empty passwords, no. You don't want people logging in with no password, that's bad, don't do that. And permanent root logon, no. Make yourself use sudo. It has better logging and better security. And Red Team liked to stop SSH in the middle of the competition, so you could do sudo systemctl status SSH to see if it started running, what's the error in the config file, all that kinds of fun stuff.
Yeah, so adding on to that, a question?
Okay, so HKing has to be an allowed user for SSH, right?
Yes, because it was a stored user, they
Yep.
were logging in and making sure that they could run commands.
And did you guys use the console the whole time or SSH as well?
I was using SSH, he was using the console.
Yeah.
Okay, does it really matter that much or?
We will discourage the console in the next competition.
Because because like I don't know, if you were to like firewall everything off and you didn't put in SSH rules, you would have to like console back in to like undo your issue.
Yeah, going to like that console thing, I would actually recommend using the console over services that you don't actually need. For Linux machines, you obviously needed SSH because it was a support service, but for Windows machines, remote desktop was not a support service, so we were able to block that and deny for a lot of the red teams attacking us there. So really it depends which do you prefer to use and then which way will allow me to eliminate services I don't actually need to secure to make it easier on me.
So
That makes sense.
to add on that, so you said that you entirely blocked RDP and only use the Windows machine through SSH, through the console?
Yes.
Okay, that's smart.
And throughout the competition, as they were knocking down our services, we had to actually diagnose them, like, you know, what the hell's going on, right? So we would run sudo systemctl status and then the name of the service. Systemctl is just a way of interacting with services. On a lot of Linux distros, uses something called systemmd. And by actually running that command, systemctl status ssh, we would get some error codes and we would know exactly why the service was not working anymore. But like 90% of the time, they didn't do anything crazy. They just either just flat out turned it off using a command like systemctl stop systemctl stop ssh, which you can just do systemctl start ssh. Or they would just go into the actual config file and just change random stuff. Throughout the competition, they were pretty intermittently going into the configuration files for all of these services and just changing stuff. Like I always had permanent root login no, but every now and then I would check it and it would be permanent root login yes. So that's definitely something that I watch out for.
This is the cool stuff, like, this catches a lot of the Linux trickery that Red Team likes to do. It's called package integrity checking. Basically, every Linux distro has a way to go through every file that the package manager maintains. So the package manager, like, installs packages, obviously. Like SSH is a package, sudo is a package, PAM that I was talking about earlier is a package. Basically, most of the base system is a package. So when you run package integrity checking, it goes through all the packages, all the files it maintains, and it checks the hash of every file. So the hash is like a unique ID. So if it changes from what was installed, it'll tell you. And often the solution if something has changed is to just reinstall it. On Linux, on Ubuntu and Debian, the name of their package integrity checking thing is debsums, and that was pretty much one of the first things I got started on, like a side pane. We'll show you in a second in Tmux. One of the things I got started and just let run for a little bit, and it showed me the PAM vector pretty much immediately, and I was able to get rid of that. Anything you would like to add?
Yeah, so installing files on Linux is a little bit different than on Windows. So in Linux, every distro has a package server. We call them repositories. And the community, whatever company runs it, if it's Canonical, Red Hat, and other stuff, they actively maintain the repository by adding in programs, updating them, and whatnot. So when you go into the command line and type in sudo apt install UFW, you send a connection to the, let's say, the Ubuntu repositories, which is maintained by Canonical, the company that runs Ubuntu, and I believe it's open source too. Not sure about that. It's Ubuntu. And then they actually add stuff in there, they maintain it. So the idea is, okay, well, you're only downloading the binaries and other programs from this trusted place, this one central server where everything can be maintained. So that helps a bit with security. Unless you, unless there's a backdoor or something, and the stuff gets pretty messy, which is pretty funny. Like, I think that happened to Mint one time, do you remember that?
I haven't kept up with that.
Okay, so one of the other services was VSFTP, and VSFTP is just another service that works for FTP, and FTP stands for File Transfer Protocol. So at the simplest level, all you do is just send files to each other. And during the competition, we had an FTP server, and there was a JPEG image that we had to protect with our lives. So what I did immediately was I copied it and just copied it to like a bunch of random places that I made note of on my system, just to make sure if they ever deleted it, I could just easily replace it. But thankfully, Red Team never really touched FTP.
They deleted it at the end.
Oh yeah, they deleted it, yeah, they deleted everything at the end. So this is an example of me running sudo nano etc vsftpd.conf. So this is the configuration file for vsftpd. And one of the biggest vulnerabilities in FTP is called anonymous enable. So on FTP, anonymous is default, right? Is it default? I think so. Sometimes it is.
Sometimes.
There is an option that is enabled quite often on FTP where an anonymous user can log in oftentimes without a password and just look around, maybe download files, maybe upload files. You wouldn't want anyone to just upload random files to your server, so we had to disable that. You'd be surprised, it's quite common. And another really interesting bit that I had, while I was actually, a week before the competition, I installed these services on my own virtual machine, mess around, try to figure out how they worked. I tried using ChatGPT to generate some secure configuration files. And the one thing I did with VSFTPD, right? With FTP, you can notice in the middle we have a user list. And a user list just points to a text file that says, okay, everyone in this text file can access this service. And it was just HKeying, right? Nobody else is allowed except for him. And ChatGPT ended up generating me a configuration file. I told it specifically I wanted a user list. It generated a config file that did include the user list, but it did not actually set it so that it could specifically use the user list. So it literally gave me a broken configuration that if I had not checked before, manually by using a user on my virtual machine to log into it with, I would have used this during competition and pretty much just left the floodgates open. ChatGPT has also generated Wireshark filters that literally do not exist. I was doing a competition, and I was having trouble with Wireshark filters. I was like, is there a filter for this? And so I asked, hey, how can I filter for this specific stuff? And it created filters in Wireshark that just literally do not exist. So be careful. I mean, Google has everything, to be honest. It's better. And then you have the MySQL box, right?
Yeah. So MySQL secure installation is the best command you could ever run if you're running a SQL server. It fixes 99% of all the stupid, horrible things that the organizers have done to set up your MySQL. That one line fixes all of it. It brings up a prompt. It prompts you to reset the root password, disable anonymous login, delete test databases. It covers all the major stuff.
And what is SQL?
SQL is a database. MySQL is a database. So you log in, you create basically all the database people are gonna be mad at me. Basically an Excel sheet is called a table, and you put data in it. That's what MySQL is, and it has users, and that's the only other major thing you have to look at is users and permissions, creating the users. So for example, in Horse Plinko, there was a WordPress website, and WordPress depends on MySQL to store stuff. And by default, it was logging in with a root user. That's not good. So instead, what I did is I created a special WordPress user for it to use, only granted it the permissions to edit the WordPress tables and send that user and password over to Windows to deal with changing it. And other than deleting accounts, running MySQL secure installation, that was pretty much all you had to do to MySQL, and it was fine. It was a fairly easy service. Sudoers. This is another high priority when you get on a box, is making sure that Red Team hasn't done funky things to your sudo config. So if you look at those two lines, %sign sudo and %sign admin, those are the groups that are allowed to use sudo. So you should also go check in Etsy groups, see which users are a member of those groups, and if there's a user you don't like being able to run commands as administrator, you should probably remove them from that group, or you could remove the groups altogether from the config file, and as long as you explicitly set the user that you're using to be able to use sudo. So an example of that is root is given all the permissions, and you could just do your own user. So for example, Ubuntu all equals all colon all that stuff. So sudo is what takes, you're running something as a normal user, and it takes it and it executes it as root. Root is the all-powerful user. Root can do everything in Linux. You do not want unauthorized people being root, because they will break your stuff. And sudo is very important to prevent that. The other major thing is, see this include dir, etsy sudoers.d. This is like, every file in this directory is also treated as the sudoers config. So you have to double check that nobody put something fishy in there either. And other than that, it's pretty simple to just lock down. Sudo is way complicated, it can do all kinds of crazy things, but locking it down is fairly straightforward.
All right, now we're getting into like the really fun hands-on part. So during competition,
I had a question about the previous slide. So it says like root all equals like parentheses all. What does that mean? What is that? I've never seen that.
all just stands for command. Just stands for commands.
I'm not 100% sure. One of them specifies what commands it's allowed to do. The colon all means that it's allowed to run as all users and all groups. And often you can sometimes see like no password there instead of all, and that just means it's allowed to use sudo for no password. Honestly, just ask ChatGPT to write your sudoers config for you. I will actually.
This is a config file?
Yes, this is in, you run vi sudo to edit it. And vi sudo is super nice because it checks the config before it writes it. So if you made a mistake, it'll tell you. If you made like a syntax error, it won't tell you if you're just removing all users and nobody has sudo anymore, but it'll tell you if you've made an obvious mistake.
Okay, so in what language is that, like in Spanish?
It's in sudoers config language, like it is its own complete thing.
Okay.
Yeah, there's no like highly technical syntax for a lot of these configuration files. Most config files are literally just this equals true or false or other thing.
What text editors are like included with the Linux install? Like I know there's
So,
VI and Nano.
Yeah, so on Ubuntu, it varies between distros, but on Ubuntu, Nano, get it. So Nano is the, it's just a command line editor. Get it, G-E-D-I-T, is just Ubuntu's graphical editor. It's just like Notepad. And then of course Vi is on almost practically every single thing. Everything, yeah. And then Vim might be on Ubuntu by default.
Yeah, Vim is on Ubuntu by default. It's not on like Red Hat stuff.
Yeah. So, it's really preference, although learning how to use Vi is definitely good, just because it's on literally everything. Now, that right there was literally me, no joke. Like, Toy Story 3 was a really good movie, but like, I'm not joking, that was literally me. So you can see like how Monkey has like all of the panes, right? Well, panes are an actual thing in Linux. I was there, just sitting at my computer, just watching everything fly by with like super wide open eyes. And I did that by using a couple of really cool tools that you guys can also learn to use. And honestly, these tools made the difference for me in competition. So the first tool I want to introduce to you is called PSPY. And PSPY shows literally every single command ran on your system, including all of these system ones that your Linux distribution does automatically by itself. And since it shows every single command, literally every single one, I could see red team the nanosecond they dropped in. I could see what files they're trying to edit. I could see what processes were actually trying to generate reverse shells, that being reverse connections. So for this, in the middle one, in the cyan, we can see that they're literally running systemctl stop vs-ftp and then also disable. Was that you, Andy?
Yeah, I think so.
Why would you do both stop and disable? Why not just one?
So it's, you have to go through both layers just to like take your time.
Stop immediately stops it. Disable stops it from being started when you restart the
I
process.
see. Gotcha, yeah. And then all the other ones in blue were just random system stuff being read. You'll see a whole lot of junk there. But one of the really important things in cybersecurity, but also forensics and incident response, is if you know what is normal, you will then know what is abnormal. If I see in PS2I somebody is trying to turn off a service randomly, okay, that's not normal. But if I see a bunch of calls to, say, systemd, that's just the computer just doing its thing, doing computer stuff. And at the very top, this is one of my biggest mistakes. This is the one reverse shell I did not catch, which I partially blame on having like 4 hours of sleep. At the very top there, we can see cron. A shell begins to spawn from cron and then runs through flock. So what that means is cron stands for cron tabs, and cron tab is just an automated or scheduled event in Linux. So if you want to run a script every 24 hours, you would just put it into cron. To establish persistence, so a way to stay in my shell, even if I killed their session, they put something in cron that would repeatedly generate a new shell. Like, any comments on that?
I'm not aware of what that one actually did. Yeah, essentially it's basically just running something every time frame that you give it.
I know what I was doing. That was a sliver shell. It was being run every minute. The flock was checking if the temp/scj.log file was existing, and then it wouldn't run if that existed. So that prevented them from getting spam loop beacons every minute. So it would check if that file existed, and then it would run ben/. Do you want to tell this part?
Yeah. Okay, so if you see something being spawned from a certain place, you should go check it. I don't know why I didn't check cron. I was like, yeah, I removed everything, totally. Turns out I didn't, duh. What's up?
So if you detect that something is trying to SSH or trying to create the reverse SSH, would you immediately put a firewall rule for deny egress?
Yeah, I would just deny the IP address flat out. But at a certain point, I had firewalled like 10 different IPs, and then they started proxying in through the scoreboard IP, and there was like nothing I could do about that. And then also in the top, right, you see bin/ss diamond D. So if I were looking through this if I were looking through the bin folder, which stands for binaries, it's where all of the commands are stored, like ls, cd, ssh, they're all a binary in bin, right? Because everything's a file. So what these fellows over here did was, they created a fake SSHD binary, and they replaced the H with like Cyrillic. What was it? Like,
Yeah, it was Cyrillic.
it was Cyrillic. So they made it like an H that wasn't actually an H. It was something from like a Cyrillic manuscript. That
Yeah,
like
but it looks identical.
it looks exactly identical, except there was like 1 pixel slightly off. So if you had just ran ls to look in there, you wouldn't have seen it. But PSQI caught it and recognized it as not being an actual H.
It's kind of a bug.
It's
a bug in that it's not.
It's kind of a bug, but it helped out. But unfortunately, I thought nothing of it, and I just moved on. So yeah, PSQI is an insanely useful tool.
So that actually would have been caught if you had like a Russian like language pack installed, and it would have been like further camouflaged. But in addition to like check if it's the correct binary being called, you can just run a sudo systemctl status sshd and see like the location of the binary being called by SSH, which was like user bin sshd instead of just bin SSHD.
Yeah. So that was also another mistake. Knowing again, if you know what is normal, you will be able to easily spot what is abnormal. SSHD by default should be a user bin. Is that right?
Yeah.
And this was running from just regular bin, from just roots binary, so I should have definitely noted that. So that was another one of the mistakes. All right, so htop. Have any of you ever used the Linux command top? Any of you use Linux command ps? So top just shows processes running in like a tree farm. PS also shows other active processes that are running. Htop is like top and PS had a baby and then gave that baby steroids. So you can just run sudo apt install htop and it will give you a very easy to use graphical interface. Looks like this. So you can literally, you can see every process that's running on the system, everything from a user, from root, or just the computer itself. 99% of what you see here whenever you run htop is just the computer doing computer stuff. But just scan through that really, really quickly. I put a backdoor there, if any of you see where it is. So at the very middle there, I just ran a netcat to create a reverse listener. And if you had htop, you could also see that. Right. And then you can use apt to install any tool, like Ranger or htop. Ranger was another tool that I had that was really, really useful. Pretty much, instead of using cd, cd .. to like move through the file directory manually, you can do it automatically with Ranger. And literally, you can just point and click or use your arrow to scan through. And this was super helpful for me because Red Team would leave their SSH keys, which are ways to get back in through a user account with SSH, and I could just delete them. And I was able to like speed through the entire system just using this. So like I said, if you know what is normal, which you just gain through experience, you'll be able to see what's abnormal. What I did to prepare for the competition was just download an Ubuntu VM, download all of these services that were mentioned in the Blue Team packet, and just mess around with them. I made some config files, and they broke, and I tried to see why. I interacted with these services. I made 2 virtual machines and tried to connect them and try to like throw files at each other and whatnot. So understanding how a service works is extremely important. How can you defend something if you don't know how it works? It's the same thing with hacking. You can't really hack something if you don't understand how it works. And adding on top of that, you could just Google how to harden this service in Linux. There are gazillions of tutorials and YouTube videos from very, very experienced people on how to do cybersecurity stuff. There's a tutorial for everything. And one really good room on TryHackMe. TryHackMe is a cybersecurity platform that has rooms or labs for Blue Team or Red Team stuff. You can hack stuff or you can defend stuff. This is one of their rooms, which is free. It's Linux backdoors. And I think every single thing here, except for bash RC, and maybe, yeah, bash RC, everything here I saw in competition. This is a really good room on TryHackMe to go through.
Wait, what was that called again?
TryHackMe. So just TryHackMe. They have a bunch of free rooms to get in.
Is it linked in the PowerPoint?
Yes, I linked it all the way in, I think. But if not, you can just look up TryHackMe and Linux backdoors. And of course, all of these slides and everything will be put up later. And just one more program that was cool, it's just called WhoWatch. All it did was just watch for any programs that were, or any users that were logging into your system. And I'm cutting into Windows time, so.
If we have time, we'll go back to
Okay.
the Linux tool.
So we're gonna start Windows now, but we may do a Linux demo at the end. And of course, all of these tools and everything will be up there.
All right, hello fellas. Again, Conan and Kevin. So, it's relatively easy this year with Windows. For what we did for the competition, mostly was local group policies, having antivirus, and a firewall, also known as LAF. You know, it's a bit funny, LAF, remember the acronym. So that's the main things we're going to cover for what we did. And also, we would like to stress going over the TCP view to see what programs are like talking to what and see if it's abnormal. And event scheduler, you know, courtesy of Bonds, that is always coming up. If you guys have competed, you guys know Bonds already. Very fun, and of course, updating stuff. And also, I mentioned, remove anything unnecessary, as we've been talking about, sending accounts don't need any software, don't need, just remove it, lowers the attack surface for you, makes it much more easy to manage.
Yeah, like he was mentioning, Windows is pretty easy to secure. If you can cover those three things, you can laugh because it's easy, pretty much easy to secure. Sorry, I had a cough. First, we have LGPOs. LGPOs are local group policy objects. They're essentially like pre-built rules for your Windows system. Essentially, you can download them like you can download them from the Department of Defense. They have good, strong securities for different versions of Windows, different tools of Windows, which you can apply during competition, and it pretty much secures all that miscellaneous settings and stuff, so you don't have to go in manually to configure. However, I do recommend actually looking into what they actually changed, so you get a better understanding of applying it manually and stuff. You can also further customize them as well to make them more specific to your needs or security levels. But that's gotten a bit more complicated, unfortunately. Did you have your hand raised? Or, Next, we have the antivirus. So the antivirus is essentially, you want something that can find all those backdoors for you, but also find something that can do more than just scan your system. Because sometimes red team files are not always, or hidden well. That's why I recommend 360 Total Security. There's a free version of it. All you need is the free services, like what we use. And this will not only scan your systems, but it will also prevent user creation. We had one of the red team members try to RDP into our system and create a user. It detected it and we were allowed to block it. It will detect and block any registry changes as well. And then provides a good live monitoring service to stop red team efficiently. Plus, it's free. You could probably use other antivirus systems. I still like 360 because it provides all the extra features unlike Malwarebytes, but yes.
Do we have to be proficient in both Linux and Windows to perform in the competitions?
I mean, if you want to, that's always highly encouraged and you'll get a better understanding of systems administration. But usually for competitions, one person specializes in Windows and one person specializes in Linux, etc. So they can home in on securing those different tools and technologies. Yes?
Another question. Did you use 360 Total Security in the comp?
Yes.
Yes.
That's what detected those user accounts and stuff.
Yeah, but by the way, for the antivirus, it has to be free. I was about to drop like a commercial, like EDR antivirus on a competition, but it has to be free, so that's why we use that one. And yeah, also it tracked. There was an event scheduled for making an account for him to get in. It caught that, it stopped that. So
Yeah.
this is my part. Okay, so firewall. The DoD GPOs, what they do, they also have their own. They kind of like take over the firewall, and you have to edit from the policy editor, group policy editor, GPO editor on the computer. So of course, make sure it's on. You want to disable everything, of course, making sure there's no outbound unless the things you need, SSH, if you have Windows on your Linux on your computer, whatever. DNS, web server, whatever you're running on there. And once you have your port, you're mostly good. I would recommend at the start, what we did was, we just turned off all outbound connections from the console. We did our normal stuff. We did hardening of it, and then once we had it hardened, we opened it back up. So we prevented the chance of the red team like putting in backdoors, and so it bought us time to safely put in our stuff before they start poking at it. Yeah. Now we do it done.
Yeah.
So, real quickly, for the all firewall rules, are you talking about like the default ones that Windows creates?
Yes,
Yeah.
so essentially if you go, and like what we'll show in the demo, real
Okay.
quick, with Windows Advanced Firewall, you just turn everything that's already created off, and then you slowly add back whatever ports you need based on the services you need.
Yeah,
So,
53 DNS.
If I go to share my screen on Zoom. There you go. Okay, cool.
How does, just both curiosity and also just like the sake of speed, how good is like just the built-in Microsoft Windows Defender and
mean, it's like Malwarebytes in the sense that it will still scan your system, but it probably doesn't do all this extra features,
Yeah.
like catch that real live monitoring of like the registry keys and also.
For competitions, you might want to get something different. Windows Defender now, if you're just downloading stuff, it's getting better now, but like again, as Connor said, more features, does more stuff, watches more things, and of course our team will probably just have a way to poke at it beforehand. So
Yeah, in Plinko, it was disabled so badly you would never have fixed it within the competition time.
Indeed. So,
You said if you're using GPOs, update GPO firewall. How do you go about doing that?
inside group policy, there's this like once you apply the
So-
duty policies, you will go in and I think you might be in the show card.
yeah,
It's in the show now, so don't worry.
Okay.
as we're going over the demo, I'll sort of explain the process too. First, you would obviously want to update your passwords. That's the first thing that you definitely need to secure. Otherwise, none of this really matters. After you update your passwords and stuff, you want to download all the software that you're going to use for the entire competition. This includes the GPOs from the website, your antivirus, and any other additional tools as well. If I go to try to make this a bit bigger. So I went to the local group policy editor. Sorry, by typing group policy into the search bar, then I click computer configuration, security settings, Windows Defender firewall with advanced security. And what that gives me is the same sort of firewall that you're used to with advanced features. And from there, you can configure the firewall rules again. And this is what to do after you apply the GPOs, because the GPOs will focus on the rules located in here and not your firewall. We actually lost a good bit of points and service times because we didn't update this, but we had our firewall rules, so we're a bit confused why the services were still. Exactly. So if I go to downloads, which is where you'll have your GPOs. So right here, I downloaded 3 things. One is the STIGs from the government, which is that Department of Defense website. They have strong secure passwords. Also, I've downloaded Microsoft Security Compliance Toolkit version 1.0 and baselines. And that gives me all these baselines here. And these baselines are like the GPOs, just a little bit less strenuous. And what these do is essentially the same sort of thing. But they're more for if you want to customize it further, they provide that base configuration. What's more important is this LGPO file here, this .exe, which you want to take and copy it. This is a part of that toolkit and download, so you'll have everything once you download all the files, and all the links are provided as well. To apply the GPOs, all you have to do is get your GPOs ready, copy that exe that I found here. So for, let's say I'm going to go into the Windows 10, and then I have a Windows 10 version, I go to GPOs, and as you can see here, the GPOs are named this long, incomprehensible spaghetti string. What you want to do to help yourself is just rename it 1, 2, to make the command a lot easier. Then, what you want to do is open up a terminal with administration access. So that's terminal here. Navigate to the file location. So once you're here, you have all of your files. You will want to have copy and pasted that LGPO executable into the same directory just to make it go easier. And then what you're going to do is, sorry, 1 second as I type it in. LGPO.exe/g, name of the directory, and now it's applying the GPO. Sweet, easy. Now I go back, apply the second one, boom, it's done. My machine has been secured. I would do this for all of the other GPOs and baselines. I would start with the government ones, obviously. For example, I would probably apply the Microsoft Edge one because this machine is running Microsoft Edge. The Windows Defender firewall, I would apply as well, and that's what makes those the Windows firewall changes and stuff. there. Essentially, that's pretty much it. You apply those settings, you restart your machine, and those settings take effect, and now red team pretty much can't break into
They
the
can't do a
system.
lot of stuff, unless they have like some things already pre-planted, they can't. I think right now after restarts, I'm sure the DoD message saying,
Yeah.
it's a crime to go to the computer.
And if you want to practice this stuff too, each student account gets free Windows 10 education ISO file. Unlike the Linux ones that are free, Windows 10 you have to pay, but UCF gives you the free
This will scare all red teamers.
Windows ISO, so you can create virtual machines of Windows 10 to practice as well at home. As you can see, our GPOs apply to the system, and we are secure, and we'd be more secure if we had time to run all those other ones as well. But it's literally as simple as downloading files, renaming some things, and copying that executable and running it again. Yes.
So this is just like a GPO copied from like what the Department of Defense uses?
Yes.
Okay, so this is essentially as like you having a Department of Defense computer, like it's hardened to that level.
Yes.
To a sense.
To a sense. Okay. And but you can still go back into firewall and then allow ports and everything to
Yeah.
block through firewall.
Yes. By going to that group policy editor and through the firewall there, you'll want to configure your firewall and take care of all of that. Essentially, just turning everything off, etc. Any other questions?
I would say don't apply them blindly, like if you know what you have to secure, make sure it works beforehand. But yeah. Rebecca?
Is there any benefit to running these on, say, like an actual Windows 10 machine instead of a Windows server?
These are, I think, these
Yes.
servers are home.
There are some for servers, and there are also some for different other Windows versions. It really just depends on the version and which GPO. For example, I ran a Windows 10 one because I'm running Windows 10, but there's also a Windows Server 2012, a Windows Server 2016 baseline for security.
It's a DoD,
yes,
so you can,
yeah.
forever. All versions.
And, yes, question.
Is that Windows Defender firewall with advanced security different from the group policy that you showed earlier?
Yes. I'm pulling this up right now just to show how to configure the firewall, but the process is the same. You just go to that GPO thing that I showed you before, group policy editor, go down to the settings to find the firewall, and then you'll get the same sort of format here. And what essentially, all you have to do is click Control, and then Shift, Control Shift, hold down, highlight all your rules, click Disable, and then turn it off, and you're pretty much golden there, because it will disable anything, and you also keep the records for later in case an inject needed, like the name of the firewall rule, or you need it to restore something, as I said. You can add firewall rules as well, and you want to add it based on the policy. Yes.
So these are allowed rules. So by disabling the allowed rules, you're letting less things in, right?
Yes.
Less things talking, less things are up. There is less defense service.
That's pretty much it for the Windows, unless anyone has any more questions.
We'll take questions at the end. We're running short of time here, but we're after to talk to us, but yeah.
I just need to get the laptop.
We will do a Linux demo now.
Yes.
This actually regards a bit of news that occurred in the last week. I was reading about that whole 3 million toothbrush DDoS thing that was going on. I know there was a hypothetical that was announced, but like, what was that all about?
That was, I don't remember which company it was, but they basically said that there was definitely a smart toothbrush botnet in the wild, but then it didn't exist and they lied, and they claimed it was a translation issue. I don't know. Basically nothing. It's theoretically possible, hasn't happened yet.
It's IoT.
Dude, like, imagine you're like playing video games online, and the servers get DDoSed by smart toothbrushes.
This is not the cyberpunk world I wanted to live in.
Alright, so now we're getting real cyberpunk here. As you can see here, we have tmux. And with tmux, you can literally split your terminal into multiple panes. So I'm pretty much just going to emulate the setup that I had during Horse Plinko. So let's see, I have here. So to actually download PSPY in competition, I had to grab it from their GitHub. So I use a command called wget, which pretty much just grabs something from the internet off of a URL that you give it. And this is the exact URL for the binary that's stored on the GitHub. So I just ran that. I already have installed very quickly, and I can type in ls to see it. And I already have PSPY here in green. So when you download something from the internet or GitHub, usually you will have to actually mark it as something that you want to execute, because most files are not executable by default. So you would just run chmod plus x PSPY64 and just that. You do the same thing if you're making a script on your computer. Like if you're making a bash script or a Python file, you would just run chmod plus x, and this just marks it as an executable. So to actually run it, all you have to do is just do period, / and then the name of the command. It would run that, and now I can see literally every single command that actually runs through. So you can see you can catch my bash there. If I were to do, let's say, it would start catching other commands. I think there's a option. Oh yeah, there's more stuff here. You can see any SSH session and whatnot, and it just keeps running through. There may be some other flags or commands that you would have to run on it, but by default, it should just start like spitting out a bunch of stuff. So I would have this running at the very bottom, and then in the top right, I would just run, maybe do sudo, but I would just run, I would run sudo ranger. And that was question. So, and then I would zoom through the file system, literally everything here. I would look in the root directory here, and I would very often find SSH keys. To actually enable hidden files, view hidden files in Ranger, I would press Z and then H. So now I can see the bash RC here and bash profile, and also the SSH stuff. So the red team actually had SSH keys in here that they would use as persistence to keep logging in with another root account. So I would keep this here. And then over here, what do I have? Over here, I usually kept it as either an open terminal. I would either just keep this as like my open terminal that I would use to knife fight with the red team, or I would be running something like HTOP. So once you've done this, I mean, at this point, you're going like full hacker man, right? Like imagine being out in public with this, like, man. Really, now we're doing some real hacking. What's up?
I'm searching.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Yeah, so this was pretty much my setup. I think at one point I had 4 terminals actually. So it's just like the monkey from Toy Story. That was literally me. And I was just navigating this to try to catch as many shells that were dropping in as possible. Yeah, also looks badass too. So, any questions? Oh, engine.
You in the back.
What was the name of the program you're using to be able to split your panels?
It's called TMUX. TMUX is in all the default package repositories, so you can just add it.
And these slides will of course be posted on Hack UCF Discord server. We'll have a presentation channel. Right.
Any other questions about anything we talked about today?
How to get that split screen set up again?
It's called TMUX, and then just Google TMUX default key bindings, and it'll have like a tutorial of how you can split the terminal and do different windows and stuff.
TMUX, very useful tool.
So I'm still a little confused on that DoD FPGA thing. Was that like actually, was that just basically setting it up using the standards that the DoD uses, or is it like actually hooking it up to their?
It's just a standard.
Yeah.
They publish it every so often and update it, so you can just download all their recommended configuration settings and
Okay.
stuff like that.
I think
That makes a lot more sense.
I think you can also turn off that like warning message every time you log in, because I just get pretty much.
Sort of, but it's also like there's a reason it's there to ensure that you acknowledge that for there's a term for it, but that's accountability essentially, that you are who you say you are and you acknowledge that you are logging into the system. So real quick,
We're skipping.
Index.
We can do resources.
so we have some resources here too. One thing I'll note is that index that we did sort of skip over are equally important as the services because usually they are worth a good chunk of points. The main thing is be prepared, make sure you can do system administration on your stuff, and also ensure that you submit it, even if you don't have anything for that partial credit.
Okay, so straight up, they were giving us injects through Discord while the competition was going on, so a lot of teams just didn't do them. Literally, the reason why we won first place overall is because, to my knowledge, we were the only team that did every single inject. Even if one or two of them was kind of crappy, we did every single one. And that is really important, and I must emphasize the only reason we won. Although we were in third to last place by halfway through, we were able to make a comeback, but even then, we were only like 4th or 5th place in points, maybe almost top 3. We didn't have enough service points to win, but injects is what pushed us over the edge and how we won.
Yeah, if the person who has all their bosses here, just make them do that. That's the awesome resources too. Thank you to our glorious leader, Harrison and Jackson. Any questions, guys? Anyone? In the back?
What is the difference between injects and services?
Injects it's like business tasks. That's what we call it. That's what they call it. It's like just another term. Services are.
Yeah, so services are what your score services are. This could be SSH running, having the WordPress site up, etc. Injects, however, on the other hand, are like creating a backup of your SQL database, adding a computer to the domain to connect them together for Windows, or adding users to Active Directory, etc. They're more those business tasks like Kevin was mentioning, rather than your services which need to still be running all the time.
Yeah, your boss wants you to write this paper now.
So it's not just securing service, it's also doing other services. You can actually use the stuff. Anything else? Anything else? Alright, lovely.
Do you want to do the ops spiel? Come to ops if you want to like really get involved with this club and be able to do cool stuff like present to a whole bunch of people. Come to ops 7 p.m. in the Cyber Lab. You're welcome to do it via Zoom. These are the people that run the club. We scheme. Upcoming events is this Saturday is Intro to Hacking in the Cyber Lab at 1 p.m. Wednesday at 6 p.m. we're doing the Lovely Nerds Social for all you lovely nerds out there. You're welcome here on this Wednesday at 6 p.m. and then next Friday.
What's the club social like for Lonely Nerd?
We do mind.
Speed dating?
No, we don't.
We haven't, it's just gonna be something goofy. We haven't super well planned what we're doing yet.
It's a Valentine's Day meme event. We'll figure it out. It'll be fun though. It'll be fun though.
Does
Is there speed dating?
No, it's not gonna
will
be.
they have anything with video games?
I don't know if we're gonna do this.
You guys remember like Doki Doki Literature Club?
And then next Friday will be the Radio Hacking GBM. Colson is working really hard, and Taylor are working really hard on those slides, so it's gonna be great.
Literally radio hacking. And of course, tomorrow in the Cyber Lab, that's tomorrow, I'm doing intro to hacking. So if you're interested in penetration testing, or really just how hacking works, we will hack some stuff together and it'll be a lot of fun.
Join all our stuff, join the Discord, especially if you're new, and
Pizza!
Go to join.hackcf.org, pull up your QR code if you're a member, and be ready to scan it for pizza.